All right. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna, and I pray everybody is doing well. You read it right. Correction. Amuna has to come first and stand corrected, and then possibly offer some correction. And so, my last video, I was trying to just address one claim that I thought I heard because there's so many theories flying around that what I thought I heard is not what was posted, right? So, for that, I stand corrected. Shout out to everybody who in the comment section was like, Amuna, go back and listen again. She did not assert that Joseph Bravo was Oscar's father. She asserted that Joseph Bravo was the father of Joseph Alexander. I know it sounds confusing. If you missed it, you might have to go way back to episode 1. There's a lot of conversation going around about the genealogy of Kamala Harris and whether or not the father Donald or she herself, Kamala, is being truthful. The reason why I personally am commenting on this is not because of politics. I keep saying it. I have to keep saying it. It's because of the practice of looking through family records to get a genealogical understanding of where you come from. I'm a big proponent of that, whether it be in America, wherever it is in the world. I'm a big proponent of that. I've gone over the Lev Project, which I read slave narratives for the entire year of 2016. Okay. I went through countless documents on mainland America in the Caribbean. So I'm big on genealogy. I'm big on knowing your history. And so I want to stand corrected because I thought I heard that she was saying he was the father, and I debunked that because I'm like, that's crazy. But what is being postured from one of the subscribers that she read the theory from is that he's not the father, that he's the grandfather. Nonetheless, we're still going to go into it, okay? So now let's go ahead and look at the proof that we were given or some type of findings, right? So I went ahead and found the book that we were referenced to in that particular broadcast. Hold on one second. And the book here is on the screen, a record. How come my book is not moving? Hold on one second. All right, let's move him now. The Jews in Jamaica. So the assertion was that they're hiding the lineage, not because they don't know, but because the grandfather was actually a Jew, and that this is something diabolical. And I just want to say to that, the institution of slave enslavement did a number on people, right? And for a very long time, these documents were not made accessible to the people who they pertain to. So there was one segment of the population, those in power, who had access to these documents. But the children of the people and the descendants of the people on the other side, aka post enslavement, did not necessarily have access to these documents. So to assert that everybody should know and everybody would know, and because they don't know is because they're lying, is not really historically accurate, right? Even the person who compiled this book, and I'm going to go ahead and scroll here, says that it took him 19 years, okay? And by the way, Candace says we should go to Appendix L, which we're going to go to. But it took him 19 years to compile this book, right? You see notes all in the book. It was written in 1941, all right? A record of Jews in Jamaica. And Jacob A.P.M. Andrade is the one who compiled this book. Okay, so for the sake of time, we're going to go to where we were instructed to look at. And by the way, Harris, much like Brown and Davis and many other names, was a very, 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 and I'm just using all these very's, common name, all right? And so was the name Joseph or Jacob. Why? Because these are biblical names. And these biblical names were something that was the go-to names for many people. John is another one, but let's continue. So as you see here, this Joseph at Brownstown is curious. There was a Joseph in the St. Anne's Parish. The Hebrew resident in St. Anne Parish assembled for divine worship on Yom Kippur at the house of Joseph Harris at Brownstown. I was credibly informed that the room Harris appropriated for service was during the lifetime never used for any other purpose. Harris was an English Jew. He came here from New Orleans, Louisiana, USA. He says that he has not been able to ascertain the provision for worship that was made in any of the other parishes. So he kind of made a little sanctuary in his home to keep Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. Okay, so let's continue. Now, again, that's just something to note. Let's jump down here. Our attention was also brought to, see how many Harrises there? In loving memory of Joseph Bravo Harris. Now, this Joseph Bravo Harris is who is being asserted or theorized as the grandfather of Oscar and the father of Joseph Alexander, okay? If we scroll up to see what we're looking at, this is the cemetery of the former English and German congregations, Windward Road. And again, the reason I'm going through this is because going through your genealogy is not an easy process. It is an arduous process. And the disadvantage we have is that we don't have the family outside of what the father wrote and some of what Kamala wrote. We don't have the family lore. Oh, yes, remember those little pieces that you can use to kind of get more context clues. We don't have that. We are the outsider looking in. So we have to be mindful that there are all of these nuances in this history and that we can errantly come to a conclusion. As it was said in the other broadcast, in the beginning, many of us who start this work do the same thing. Okay, we want this to be, but the reality is you have to ask yourself so many questions before you confirm. But that's not what's happening on the internet today. I'm seeing the record change. The minute a video goes up by Candace, somebody's in there changing the records. That's kind of like spray painting graffiti on the Sphinx. How do you just go in and just start changing, blowing off the nose of the statues in Egypt, like Napoleon? Like, how do you just go in and start messing with people's stuff? I don't know. But anyway, this is the cemetery of the former English German congregation, Windward Road. Windward Road. Okay. Now, this Windward Road is in Kingston. This is a cemetery for former English and German congregation in Kingston, Jamaica. Let's continue. We also see St. Anne Parish on his Penn property, Inverness. And that's another correction I would like to make. It seems small, but I kept calling the location Iverness. My apologies. Inverness, okay? And this Joseph Harris is the 15-line item here, and he's the brother of Ralph Harris, also his children, George and Randolph. Enfield Penn, then owned by Charles S. Cover. I kind of went down the Charles F. Cover rabbit hole, but I'm not going down there today because, again, this is a lot of confusion going on. So we're going to just stay on topic. Let's go back up to the top to see what we are looking at. What we're looking at on this particular line item is, see, we are looking at partial lists of epitaphs on tombstones, okay, of Jews who have been buried in cemeteries other than Jewish consecrated grounds. So he went throughout the place and looked for where Jews may be scattered throughout the districts that's not in a concentrated area, okay? So with that said, this particular Joseph Harris is in St. Anne in Inverness, and our attention is being called to this particular location. So what I made a mistake on before is not doing what I usually do. what I did in the other episode, is to delineate all of the claims. I thought it was just a simple claim. I misheard. I rebuffed or reproved that claim, and it's like, I got you. And I'm like, bruh, no, let's do it again. So that one was my bad. So let's look at what claim is actually being made here. The claim that's being made is that this Joseph Bravo Harris is the unknown father of Joseph Alexander Harris. To what I heard, Joseph Bravo then would be the great grandfather of Donald Harris, and that Joseph Bravo is the nephew of Joseph Harris, buried in Inverness on his property. So when it was used to explain that, yes, we know that these are two different Joseph Harrises, but they're related, and that the one in Inverness, is actually the uncle for Joseph Bravo. And somehow this means that he is Joseph Alexander's father. Hey, I don't know. I don't make this stuff up, but we'll continue. I'm telling you, boy, this is like Charlotte's Web up in here. So just weaving tales. I know we got to theorize, but so just Joseph Alexander Harris, the problem is there is no official birth certificate for him. I came across what was attached to his file and I shared that, but this person would have been born in another parish. He would have been born in Clarendon, right? And there's no mother or father on that particular baptismal paper. So in this case, Joseph Harris's mother is unknown. And the dad theory, I think I'm going to call this one the dad theory, is that Joseph Bravo Harris is really his daddy. I didn't make this up. I'm just speaking to how detailed, how this genealogy is so it's crazy. It's crazy, but it's rewarding, right? So I'm not saying we can't, use our brains and try to understand what it is that we're looking at, but we also have to be mindful. So let's continue. This is the theory. I'm going to call it the dad theory, okay? So the research here is that Joseph Bravo lived in Kingston. I think I showed that in the last reproving video. Joseph Bravo married in Kingston. Joseph Bravo's father's name is Ralph Harris because that was on the marriage certificate. And Joseph Bravo died in Kingston in 1894. By the way, his name is Joseph Bravo Harris, okay? So there are two Josephs running around, and one is said to be, I have to keep recapping, the father of the latter, okay? But we have to ask ourselves a series of questions because this is almost like scientific theory, right? We can't just theorize. We have to go through all of the stages of proving a hypothesis, presenting a hypothesis, and then substantiating that hypothesis. So one has to present the null hypothesis, and then we either fail to reject or reject the null, right? We don't know if it's true or not as yet. So if Joseph, this is my questioning, this hypothesis, if Joseph Bravo fathered Joseph Alexander, right? So let's say what you are saying is correct. This would mean he would be 16 years old at the time. That's number one. Also, if Joseph Bravo was unwed, the child would not be named Harris at birth. So much like we saw in other documentations, right? If this 16-year-old fathered his son, Joseph Alexander, and he was not married, then he would not be named Joseph Alexander Harris at birth. So looking for a Joseph Alexander, you would not find him. Now, if the Joseph Alexander Harris that we found registered in Clarendon is him, and this is what I said in the first video, he would be colored and neither mother or father was named on that particular baptismal paper. One more if. If Joseph Alexander was born in St. Anne, Inverness, no record has yet been found to confirm that Joseph Bravo is the father. So what I'm confused about is how do we find one person with a similar name and then automatically say that this is the father, and then we begin to weave like, and then his brother was into such and such, and I'm like, wait a minute, how did you get to the brother, the uncle, and the dog when we have not yet confirmed that this is the guy? But let's continue. I just want to point out again how far Kingston is from Inverness. It's a good little trek. So the first Joseph Alexander is down by that white dot, beyond Portmore, okay? And the second Joseph Alexander, or the quote, their uncle, is all the way up in Inverness. I don't know, right? I don't know. Because the son, we're going to look. I'm not even going to get ahead of myself. This was the paper that I found connected and I shared. And I made sure that I said, if this is him, then he would be colored in illegitimate according to this baptismal paper. Because this says Joseph Alexander Harris, Orange Hill. This is what is traditionally connected to him. But again, because there is no mother or father listed here, it is not even wholly proven, right? This is something that is a little bit more tangible than what we're being presented. But let's continue. So as not to be in error, I'm going to say what has been researched and then say the hypothesis of the if then again. Joseph Harris's proprietor of Enfield in Inverness, St. Anne, and was buried on the land. We saw that in the book. Okay. Joseph Harris of Inverness, St. Anne, has a brother named Ralph Harris. We also saw that in the book. Joseph Harris of Inverness, St. Anne, had two children, George and Randolph. Now, one could go down the rabbit hole looking for George and Randolph, but it only has relevance if we believe that this is Bravo's uncle. And the reason that people need this to be Bravo's uncle is because of the location solely, because it's in Inverness. Okay, so if Joseph of Inverness is related to Joseph Bravo, where is the proof? We have not gotten any proof as yet, other than a similar name of Ralph being the brother of Joseph in Inverness and the father of Bravo, who's in Kingston. Again, these names were recycled heavily. That's only one point of contact. We don't have any proof that this is him. We cannot say definitively that this is him. Again, let's say if Joseph Bravo fathered Joseph Alexander. I know this sounds confusing, but this is what you have to go through before you jump out and say, aha, I got you. You know what I mean? Where did this take place? Basically, we don't know who the mother is. With who did it take place? Who's the mama? When did this take place and where did it take place? All of these key answers that would help at least one of them to kind of pinpoint this particular theory to a place, a time, and a person. We don't have those things. Those are questions, okay? This is just to illustrate how wild it is to assume that just because you found a Joseph Harris in St. Anne, it means that it's the Joseph Harris. And the reason is I put Joseph Harris, St. Anne in the search, and it brought me back 1,670 possibilities. Now, of course, as you go down through the pages, Harris may turn to Harrison, Joseph may become the middle name, but just to show you how much data and information is and how many people were named the same thing. Let me go to another page. Joseph Harris, Joseph Harris, Joseph. You know what I'm saying? My point is, how do you know that the Joseph Harris that you are asserting, meaning the Joseph Harris of Inverness, how do you know that that's his uncle? How do you know? Because this is where this is where we saw when Donald said that certain things was unknown to him. The possibility is yes, you don't have all the answers, even if you're related to these people. Now, here's another clue. I'm wrapping up soon because I know this one was a doozy. All right. But here's another clue about the Joseph Alexander Harris that is attached to Donald. Donald said Joseph died a year after he was born. Donald was born in 1938. Joseph died in 1939. Donald said he was buried in Brownstown. This Joseph was buried in Brownstown. So even though the birth of this Joseph may be a little bit of a mystery, we see the ending of his life a little bit more concrete, which, to tell you the truth, Donald is 1 year old. That means he would have to have heard this from someone. He wouldn't have been old enough to remember himself. So this Joseph, which would be, according to Donald, his grandfather, was buried in Brownstown, Mr. Joseph Alexander Harris, and that he was also a businessman who fell suddenly ill and then he passed. For many years, he was the director of Brownstown Benefit Building Society. Okay? What is this telling us? This man was a businessman. When you look lower to the bottom, you see all of the people that was attending his funeral. Okay? And you see what he dedicated a greater part of his life towards. This is important because this particular Joseph, a lot of things taking place in his life is not happening in Inverness. It's happening in Brownstown. Okay. Inverness to Brownstown is almost 4 hours on a brisk walk on a sunny day. Again, like I said, I don't know if you Ubering back in the day on horse and buggy. A brisk walk on a sunny day is 4 hours and 21 minutes away, meaning look how many towns is in between there. So it stands to reason that there may be another Joseph Harris in Inverness separate from the Joseph Harris in Brownstown. And as I just showed you, when we're looking for Joseph Harris's in St. Anne, there are a lot. Now, this just came to me. I tell you the truth. I recorded my thoughts last night, but I decided, which oftentimes is important to do, to let the information rest. It's like when you're making fresh juice and you make it settle. You understand that the dregs go to the bottom. You understand what I'm saying? I said, no, you know what? I'll go and make this thing rest, But all night, because I'm very passionate about this, if you can't tell. I'm not coming for anybody. I'm just passionate about this work. I said, let me let this thing rest, and then I'll come and deal with it in the morning. So I erased what I recorded last night and came back this morning. Okay. And then I said, let me go back and read, because really this is all we have to go on based on the family law. This is what he gave us, family law. And I said, let me read it again. So he opens up, and this is Donald Harris, by saying his maternal grandmother, that means his mother's mother. We went over this before, but for a different reason. And sometimes you have to keep going back and going back and going back. I'm using this as an illustration, but I'm really talking about the blueprint of how to do it for yourself, right? Because I don't know these people really, you know what I mean? So in going back, you're like, wait a minute, I use this for something else to find Miss Iris. But if I read it again, his mother's mother is from Annantown, Inverness, ancestry unknown to him. He did not say that the Harris ancestry is unknown to him. He said his mother's ancestry is unknown to him. And his mother, Iris Finnegan, is from Inverness. So then I have to ask the question, why are those who are posturing this particular Joseph Bravo theory looking for a Joseph Alexander in Inverness? I'll ask the question again. If we are being told that it is the mother, that means the Harris family is not coming from Inverness, according to what he's telling us. The Harris family is in Brownstown. He goes on to say, the Harris name comes from his paternal, his father's father, Joseph Alexander Harris. We just read Joseph Alexander Harris's obituary in Brownstown. He was a businessman in Brownstown. He was a part of the building project in Brownstown. So this Joseph Alexander, it stands to reason, has connections not in Inverness, but in Brownstown. His mother's mother is coming from Inverness. Why then are we looking for Joseph Alexander's daddy? Back to the claim that Joseph Bravo is the nephew of Joseph Harris, buried in Inverness. Why would that matter if the Harris family is rooted in Brownstown? Now, how long have they been rooted there? I don't know. But according to what we are being told here, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. According to what we're being told here, okay, just to recap, there were claims that were made about the reason and the impetus behind hiding the family. I already addressed the fact that a lot of us don't know whole parts of our family, okay? And this is what this information is for, to be able to learn that and get in contact with that. And as it was said in other episodes, to heal from the hurts and the pains and the experience, and to embody, the fullness of who you are. A lot of people do not have that and do not have that, and would appreciate the opportunity to have it. So that's number one. Number two, the Joseph Alexander Harris, this particular one that he says is his grandfather, is not rooted in Inverness. The grandmother is. And so with that, I'll just go ahead and leave that right there. Hopefully, I know I asked more questions than I gave answers, but hopefully I was able to illustrate that, sometimes we can go on wild goose chases because we don't have the proper context. We don't have additional information. We think we know what we don't know, because this is him. Maybe not. We have to look and look and look again and ask the right questions. So with that, thank you for your patience. That was a little bit confusing. Once again, my apologies. I stand corrected. I answered the wrong claim, but hopefully I answered the correct claim today. And I pray everybody has a blessed day. And you don't know, we'll talk again. One.